Never ever have enough time to play at all. You know everybody wants to walk in someone else's shoes. Everyone's forgotten who they are. Such a crime to waste his time away. Such a low-down, goddamn dirty thing. There's a man that I know who works his fingers to the bone. Never gets to spend any time at home at all. He's working, slaving all day, watching his life skedaddle away. Another life that's bound to fade away. Such a crime to waste his time away.
Good morning and welcome back to Otter Creek in Rio Grande. I thought I'd start this particular episode with a look at the layout, from a couple different angles of where I'm at, and then kind of transition into what's going on right in here. You can see I've progressed. I've got the bench work finished up in this particular section. Now I haven't made any of the risers or the stilts, as some people like to call them. I haven't made any of that permanent yet, but it's going along pretty good. Let's just take a quick look at what I've done. In the previous upload, I still was indecisive about whether or not the leg needed to be on the outside or the inside, and I decided that I wanted it to be supported on the inside, which I think is going to work better for my fascia. At least that's what I'm thinking right now. And I did cut out a little bit of the cork to make sure that, I figured over time if I put it on the cork, it was going to sponge down over time. So I got rid of the cork there. Now, all of my stilts right now, none of them are glued. They're all can slide left or right. And I've got this gap between here and here. This is where the crossover is going to land when I actually do the track work. The bulk of my tortoises will be in between these 2 points there. Now, I had mentioned earlier that I might put a riser up in here and kind of help with this area. I don't know if that's kind of dark. Let me see if I can show a better view of that. I've got this L girder here attached to the bottom of my splicer plate, holding on this L girder going that way, which works great. What I found out was, because I was going to put another down leg here coming up, and what I found out is that even though I kind of went by Lynn Westcott's distance, I had no more than 6 feet. What I discovered was that this area in here between that leg and a leg way back here, it just was too spongy. So I introduced this leg, which took care of all of that. Everything is nice and solid all in through here. And I no longer have any concerns about sagging, over time. I think everything's well supported at the moment. And I still have a couple more cross joists that I can introduce in here anywhere if I decide I need them. Right now, I don't think I do, but I've got a couple of them cut already I can put in wherever I think I need them. One thing that I would do differently if I were to do it again is the L girder back here on the wall. It was really not necessary. I should have just made that, one solid piece of wood, because what ended up happening is I needed a way to join this cross joist with that, and I didn't end up with a lot of room for a pocket hole, which is what I ended up doing on all of them. So there's only one pocket hole holding up each of these cross joists there in between the L girders. Now it feels nice and solid, and I'm really not overly concerned about it. But what I should have done, again, is made that piece on the back wall all this length here, where I could have very easily gone in with 2 pocket holes. I think my plan is to put maybe a small, I don't know, L bracket on the underneath side of there that won't interface too much into the backdrop. And honestly, I'm not sure if I even need it, because it does feel quite solid everywhere, except this down on this end is a little spongy. But I'm gonna fix that, I think, with the bench work that's gonna come next. And that's where I'm at right now, is finishing up everything from here down. I'm gonna try and knock that out today and be ready to work on some track next weekend. The primary support structure is complete for the reverse loop area. And you know, I've got a couple of 3 boards here that I haven't painted blue yet. And the reason why is I wasn't sure the length that they were going to be at the time that I cut them. And I had already kind of quit painting, so I, just didn't paint those. But, kind of the same thing over here. None of this is painted blue. When the plywood comes off, I will come back in here, and whatever else needs painted, I'll paint all at the same time. The next thing is figuring out the splicer plate for what's going to go on further down, and the height of the risers that's going to be on top of this. So that's going to be pretty straightforward, no real issues there. And I'm going to get started cutting all that stuff up right now. coming along nicely, pretty much just exactly like I was hoping it would. About 51 inches to the top of the plywood here, give or take. And I probably need to explain this area right here. Now it's been a while since I've talked about anything related to the building, but this corner right here is not square. It's not square by a lot. And, you know, I was short 3 inches right here, and I didn't want to try and make up something in the corner down here that was going to support the plywood 3 inches away from the wall. So I took all my slack that way, and you know, so that's left a gap here of about 3 inches. And let me show you, with the plywood all the way down there and squared up with the wall on that end, you can see it's not the same distance here as it is there. It's actually, that's not an optical illusion. It is a I don't know what you call that, a trapezoid or whatever. It's not square by any stretch of the imagination. But I thought it would be better to try and, you know, create a 3-inch piece here than to mess with any of it down on that end, which is kind of what I did with the staging yard. I just think it's going to be a lot easier to deal with here with a wider splicer plate than I've used before. And the other thing, I'm not completely, I haven't put in any of the screws on the splice there. And, you know, I don't want to glue anything in yet until I'm 100% sure that this is where it's going to be. But I think that's kind of what I'm looking at next, is making sure that this piece of plywood is precisely where it needs to be, so I can make the splice plate here permanent on this side of the plywood, and then figure out how all of this is going to work in here. Now, I have thrown in the stamp mill just to kind of see how it's going to look and how all this is going to come together. I left a pretty large spot between this leg and this leg, because right in here somewhere is where the ladder is going to end up being for the yard that's more or less down on this end. And then figuring out the track that's going to the mill, and then, you know, also kind of giving some thought to how this is going to proceed that way. I'm thinking, you know, 24 inches out from there is what I'm looking at. And then eventually, once I get both of these pieces of plywood set where I know they need to be, I'm also going to take a look at the spline and see how it's going to interface, at what height off of this it's going to be. Now, eventually, I'm going to cut away a certain amount of this plywood on the backside, because, you know, I can't reach anything back there anyway. There's no real reason for it to be there. And even my backdrop is going to cut through here much closer than, you know, all the way back. Or at least that's the plan at the moment. And it's just because it's not easy to work back there at all. So I guess we'll see what happens next. Now that I've got everything clamped down pretty good, and I even made sure that the splicer plate there, I've got some screws going in there, so everything should be aligned as good as it's going to be aligned. I've gone in and laid my track back down, and pleasantly surprised that everything still fits. So that worked out good. So the next thing that I think I want to do, let me turn the camera here. Of course, is figure out exactly how everything's going to work in here, and I'm real close to where I think I need to be here. What I want to do is put some kind of temporary piece of plywood here at the same level so I can check the radius of any trackage that is continuing on down that way, just to kind of make sure that I like how everything is going to work in here. And then also kind of, that will give me some ideas of where to put the stamp mill. And it's just all, you know, trial and error. So here we go. Just some thoughts on my process here in case, you know, you're confused at what I'm doing for whatever reason. What I've done is I've placed in all the track that I can loosely, and basically nothing, there's no rail joiners whatsoever back from this direction where the crossover is. Everything that way, I have rail joiners and everything's fairly solid and exactly where I want it to be. Now everything this way is just loose. So what that does is it allows me to figure out how many pieces of track between each turnout, you know, moving this way. And there's a little bit of, you know, thought in that. I've got a full joint of track between here and the crossover. And then I can't remember if that's a full one or not, but it's pretty close if it's not. And then I've got two between here and there. And this middle track there is really what I use to set my distance to this first turnout. And then I can put that turnout up to it and then figure out how much track I need going that way. So the next step will be to solder the track together, you know, in the areas between the turnouts. And then I can get a little more serious about aligning the turnouts with the track. So, you know, I tried to use the Pico track for this, and I don't want to knock Pico, but it just will not hold its shape if you're trying to do anything that involves a radius or some kind. You have to have push pins or something. And if you're working on top of plywood, it just doesn't, it's not conducive. So I don't like using Pico. There's nothing wrong with it, but if I can use micro engineering, I'm gonna use it. It's made in America, and I love the fact that it holds its shape. Now there are some changes that have happened, and I'll point those out. Let me turn around here. I decided that this length of track here with the proposed oil dispensary, bulk oil station, that it probably wasn't going to be enough room, especially if that needs to be on this side of the track, because I want room on that side of the track for some terrain, some landforms of some kind. So instead, I'm thinking about putting this in, which is a grain elevator. And kind of what I'm envisioning is a road, that will come through here and maybe wrap around this track and go back out and disappear underneath the bridge that way. Still kind of thinking about that, but I just don't think there's going to be enough room there for the structures that I have in mind for the bulk oil dealership. Instead, I think I want the bulk oil to be down here. I think it's going to work a little bit better there, and I should have plenty of room for it. Now, this end here, I'm still kind of in a indecisive mode at the moment, I guess you would say, as to whether or not this track needs to come into a turnout there, or if it just dead ends there. And what I have to keep in mind is that the high line going down here to the other end has got to be, I'm guessing 9 inches higher, give or take, than the baseboard here, and there has to be room for it back there as well. So this stuff right here, for sure, from where the splice is that way, is just kind of there for the moment. I'll get a little more serious about shaping it and making sure I know where it needs to go after I come up with the spline going across there, so I have a better idea of what the terrain is going to look like holding up the track, because those things are going to have to work together in here in a way that doesn't look stupid, hopefully. So the work I've done up till now has given me all the confidence I need to go ahead and make a final decision on these 2 turnouts. Those are the most critical ones. This one and this one back here. I've got a little room on those still. They're probably real close to where they're going to be, but this one, these 2 right here, work pretty good, and I think I can go ahead and solder together all of the track, and I think that's what I'm going to do next, is solder together these 2 pieces and everything associated with these 2 tracks here. I don't know if I will that one yet or not, but we're going to have to see how that works. And because here's the deal with all of this area back here. The backdrop, the high line, the placement of the stamp mill, and the associated track on this level with it, all of those things are symbiotic with each other. They've got to work together in a way that's going to work with all 3. So I can't really think about any one of those things without thinking about the other 2. So before I get too carried away with any of this other track associated with the stamp mill, I want to go ahead and get some spline put up so that I kind of understand where it's going to be and what kind of problems I'm going to face with it. Well, we're coming to close on a pretty productive weekend. I've got all of the track now from the crossover all the way down to the far east end of Maroon Creek, and then these 3 turnouts here are, in their final position, barring any major catastrophes or anything. Now, I haven't laid any of the track going this way permanently, because once again, I want to see how the spline is going to go across here, and That's something I'm working on right now. And you can see I just got these 5-inch risers in here for now. Really the only purpose that they're serving at the moment is to get it up off of the plywood, and then I can do some math and figure out, you know, what do I want the final height to be. I'm pretty sure that I'm actually pretty close right now. I don't know how much higher it might need to be. I think 5 inches is a decent height to cross over. Now it needs to be pushed back. It's certainly not where it needs to be at the moment. Right now it's just laying there and creating its own arc, and I'm gonna have to do some pushing around and adding in a few things here and there to give it some support from the underneath side so I can form it to its final configuration at some point. So that's all for this video. Thanks for watching Otter Creek and Rio Grande, and we will see you in another episode coming soon to a YouTube video near you.